Okay, I guess it's going live. So, welcome, Jordan Tucker, to the Unnamed Show. Super informal. This is the first show. But really, man, I just want to have you on, talk about our Super Bowl experience, talk about the Cowboys, the draft, and anything else that comes to mind. But appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you coming to the Super Bowl as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, man, I had a blast, man. I'm honored to be the very first guest, right? So I'm honored, man. But yeah, I had a blast at the Super Bowl, man. It was great just meeting, so many people such as yourself and Nolan, who we were with, and seeing like a lot of incredible football minds in the sports media field. Meeting Media Row, you saw everyone. You saw Pat McAfee, you saw Kay Adams, you saw Stephen A. Smith. The list goes on and on. So it's kind of be cool to be elbow to elbow with a lot of those important people. But then also the players, man. The players were there. They were doing a lot of interviews. They were on the go, very active. We went and interviewed the Chiefs and 49ers, got up close and personal, man. So overall, it was a great experience from a media standpoint to be on Media Row at Las Vegas at the biggest sporting event in the world. Man, it's something I'll never forget.
Yeah, dude, that was awesome. And the fact that you showed up, I think that made my experience so much better because I don't know, I felt at home. There wasn't any other Cowboys fans or anyone that covered the Cowboys there. And you showing up, man, it made it that much better. Um, but dude, I mean, that was that your first Super Bowl?
That was my first Super Bowl. So I did one. I did the 2020 Super Bowl, but back then Media Row was all virtual. So yeah, that was my first real Super Bowl. I don't count,
Yeah.
so on a Zoom call with Joe Burrow, I'm not going to count that one. So yeah, Vegas was definitely my first Super Bowl, and it was a great experience. Salute to the radio station here in Kansas City, KLKC Radio, ESPN, and then also High Point with Des Bryant, man, for getting us out there, and we had a blast. Like I said, seeing you and seeing Nolan's kind of sign up release because I like to call us new media, because a lot of you saw like they were sitting at the table, they kind of just wait for players to kind of walk around. But I was like, man, this is kind of boring. So I was up and moving.
Right.
We were up and moving, and there was
Yeah.
so much action just being on foot and pulling out your cell phone and getting those quick interviews or deep in-depth interviews on the go when it's going to the NFL fan experience and talking to fans and doing content that way. I think that that's the future of media. I think we really put that on display out there at the Super Bowl.
Right, and that's how you differentiate yourself too, because you have, I don't know, 100. There was 100 booths,
Right.
and they're kind of all doing the same thing for their, sub segment. Some people are based in New York or Kansas City or obviously San Fran. Pretty much everyone came in from their city, their fan base, right? But um, yeah, that kind of set it apart too because it is about the fans. Like you
Right.
see
Yeah.
some of those like viral videos, it includes the fans too. It's not just the players, but I'd really like to next year have my own booth or be part of someone else's booth
Mhm.
to where we could interview, throughout the
Right.
weeks, 50, 60 players, something like that. I
Yeah.
think that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's
Um,
what I was kind of saying. Like what that was is pretty much casing out the joint. So now I know what equipment I need because I brought so much equipment because I didn't know, man. And like the very first day, I had like 2 bags worth of stuff. And I was like, man, I don't feel like carrying this around and setting all this up. So now I know how, kind of interact with people and kind of stay on the go. I don't need to carry all that because it was a lot of walking, man. I logged like 24,000 steps the first day. Man, we was exhausted, but it was fun. We were on the go doing what we love to do. Like I said, the environment, the atmosphere, the fandom there. Like you didn't have time to get tired. Like when I got home, I definitely I slept though.
Yeah, I mean, it was the coolest thing. It was like if you were even debating on, should I go or shouldn't I have gone?
Yeah.
It's like go
Right.
because it's pretty rare that you get all the people in the NFL and sports media in one city for that
Mhm.
long. I mean,
Right.
that happens once a year. Then maybe you have the draft, but
Mhm.
I mean, Super Bowl media week, that was, I mean, yeah, for me, it was the same thing, just kind of scouting it out.
Yeah.
And then next year, kind of have a game plan. And I mean, I even talked to the guys at overtime and they said, yeah, if we have time available, you can use our studio and
Mhm.
we'll film it and everything. If you get an athlete on,
Mhm.
we've got 3 chairs here in a full podcast studio with the
Mhm.
overtime backdrop
Mhm.
and they're like, yeah, you can use this. And so there's so much opportunity there. I think, next year, just getting some players, get some interviews lined up, and then going from there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, do you think so? We did media day or the player interviews. We went to the team hotels. Who was your favorite player to interview? Did you have some guys that you really enjoyed? Because I know they had, for those who don't know, every player was available to interview.
Mm-hmm.
That was the coach that went first at the podium, and then it was one of the star players that went second. So for the 49ers, it was Brock Purdy, and then it was Kyle Shanahan, right? And then I think the second day that we were there was Kyle Shanahan, then Fred Warner. But then you had a lot of guys, some starters, and the rest of the backups that were just sitting there at the table. So you could sit down with anyone you wanted to and have a conversation. Was there someone that kind of stood out to you, or who did you enjoy talking to the most?
Yeah, it was a few. I mean, of course, I got to interview Pat at the podium, of course, that we both did, but then also getting to interview Pat after he won the Super Bowl. That's kind of a special experience because what people don't understand when you're at an event such as the Super Bowl, I mean, you're sitting with the who's who, right? There's New York Times and LA Times and, these big mega outlets, and they don't have time to ask all the questions that they want. So it's very selective. And so to kind of sit at the podium, Pat Mahomes, I won't say Dak Prescott, Pat Mahomes just won the Super Bowl in the MVP, and they're kind of passing around and kind of pointing questions out. And for them to call on me to interview Pat, like that was a special moment to be like, okay, I was one of the 6 people in a room of probably like hundreds that got to interview Pat after he won the championship. So that was a special moment. But, some of my favorite interviews was some of the more unknown guys like Nick Bolton, the linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, phenomenal talent. He was one of my favorite rookies in his class. I believe that was the 2021 class, middle linebacker out of the University of Missouri. Talked to him for a minute. His just football IQ was just off the charts. Trent McDuffie, the cornerback for the Chiefs, who played outstanding. He had a lot of great things to say. From the 49ers standpoint, rookie Jair Brown, who was the safety that was coming in a big role, playing a big spotlight. Former Dallas Cowboy Randy Gregory, getting to sit down with him. So, I mean, there was a lot of great interviews. It wasn't a lot of interviewees that I said, this is kind of whack, right? I mean, everybody was pretty much on their P's and Q's. It was a great environment. I love talking to Christian McCaffrey, Travis Kelce, of course. Trying to think another one. L'Jarius Sneed. It was just a special moment for both of us, right? Because both of it being our first time, but we didn't feel out of place, and I tell people this. I told my story on my Instagrams, like leading up to it, I was like, oh no, man, like, are you kind of over here? Like, this is the Super Bowl. Like, are you prepared for this? I was studying because even though I know football, I'm a Cowboys guy. Like, I know the Cowboys. You ask me any Cowboys question, it's but when it comes to the Chiefs and other teams, I have to kind of think and research and so I was like, I'm gonna be on my P's and Q's. And that Wednesday when I first got to Media Row, I kind of sat down and I was, on the station. I was like, oh no, my eyes were kind of big. And then something clicked. It's like, nah, man, this is what you do. This is what you've been blessed to do. Go own the place. And I started walking around and I ran to you. Just like, we were just in our mode. And so when I sat down in front of a lot of those players, I wasn't nervous. Like, even when, because Joe, like, you'll have a question in mind and someone will steal your question. But I had 4 or 5 questions. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it was just, a great experience, but it shows the preparation that we did and that we really belong being in that Super Bowl space. So a lot of great interviews, a lot of great content.
Dude, absolutely. I learned so much from that experience, and I thought it was crazy that you got to do. I felt lucky to do what I got to do, but the fact that you were able to interview even after the Super Bowl, that was crazy.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little jealous, but that was legendary, being able to interview after and see it all the way through, because you interviewed them all week long and then through it all, and Chiefs and Pat repeat, and you're right there. And you know what? You say you were one of 6 people out of 100 or whatever to ask him a question. But from my experience there, like, you put yourself in that position. I know you got that front row spot. You put yourself in that position.
I was front row
to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I learned so much. So that Thursday when we interviewed the Chiefs, that last day, So just to put this, in your mind, the last day to interview the Chiefs 3 days before the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And the first bus you got on, I think you said it was maybe half full. It wasn't that full.
Mm-hmm.
I missed that bus. I got on the second bus and it
Mm-hmm.
was empty
Mm-hmm.
when I got on. And then 3 other people got, so it was 4 of us on this huge bus that fits 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going through. I'm just wondering. No one wants to interview the Chiefs 3 days before the Super Bowl. Where's the hunger? Where's the desire to? If I told some people that, I mean, I can't imagine how many people would die for that opportunity.
Right.
And then once we got there, it was hard. It's kind of like every man for themselves when you're trying to ask a question. But then I also saw, there's a lot of people that have been in the industry for so long, and not everyone, but I did see a lot of people, they just didn't have that passion. Maybe they've been doing this for 30 or 40 years and it's not new to them anymore.
Right.
But or something else I noticed was they would ask, like, Pat Mahomes, this is your 4th Super Bowl. What is your mindset?
Right.
Come on.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You're kind of wasting our time, you're wasting his time. But that gave me a different perspective, just seeing that and knowing that the few, I don't know how to put it, I guess the few savages, the few people that are, gonna be go-getters and do well in this industry, that are hungry and passionate and love what they do. It's up for the taking, right? So
yeah, I agree. I agree with you, and I think that is our superpower for a lot of us up and comers, right? And whether they, and like I said, a lot of people want to put the stigma box on us as content creators. Like after last or 2 weeks ago, I'm getting rid of that title. We are sports media. You're sports media, because I seen us in that same room and we were doing the same exact things, if not. So it was just like, that's our passion. We just love the game, like I couldn't sit down. Like even when I sat down for the radio segments, I was just like, I'm back. I gotta keep moving, right? Because it's the opportunity. There's Adrian Peterson over there. There's Micah Parsons over there. There's Quentin Johnston. And for me, it was like, since I'm such a football, I don't know, savant, I knew a lot of players that were walking around that the average reporter did not know, so I knew, okay, there goes Quentin Johnson, he's the rookie, there goes Sauce Gardner or Breece Hall, or some of those guys, or
you recognize Breece. I probably wouldn't have recognized Breece.
So remember, right, when I recognized Breece, he's probably been asked the same lethargic question all week. But when I was able to say, yo, I'm from Wichita, because we're from the same city and this is the high school, he stopped instantly and he had the connection. So we're able to connect with players just at a different level, because we kind of speak their language a little differently. And I think when I was interviewing Nick Bolton and Trick McDuffie, and even when I was at the podium, I interviewed Travis Kelce, there was a lady next to me. She was from the LA Times. And she was like, I don't know why I'm here. I'm just really here to ask him one question about Taylor Swift. I don't know how all this works. I just hope I get to ask this one question, because this is what they sent me here for. And I was saying, okay, so she's asking me what to do. And so I knew that when they come to the podium, there's going to be a director that's going to kind of point out. So I personally went and talked to the director. It's like, hey, she's all the way from the LA Times. She just wants to ask Travis this one question. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job or anything, but is it okay that she asked this question? Can you just look out for it? She's like, oh yeah, not sure. And I told her I was from Kansas City. So I built that report. So she asked her question. So I sacrificed my question so she can get her question off. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting there all right, here we go. Right. So she asked her question about Taylor Swift, and Travis, kind of been asked this question all dang week. And then I was like, well, man, go ahead and ask your question since you gave her yours. I was like, okay, sure. So I asked him a question about, where he gets his hunger from and what keeps him burning. And he just went on this rant about his hometown, his family, his parents. His eyes lit up thank God it's a football question. And I feel like for some people, they were like, this guy knows ball. With Nick Bolton, it's he's talking scheme, he's talking football versus, what's your thoughts on Travis Dayton? Like, why does it matter? So I
Yeah.
just we're just able to connect with them on a different level, and our passion is just our superpower.
Yeah, which if it's the question I'm thinking about where she asked, "Can you finish this line?" Something like that. Was
So
that the question?
she was to the left of me. The other girl was to the right of me. So I know what you're talking about. The
Oh.
finish the line girl. She was to the left of me. But
Now
the
I
other,
remember that question, and it
yeah,
actually got featured on TMZ. And
yeah,
then your question, I did see that, and I didn't remember you. I was there. I didn't remember
uh,
you asking that, but I do remember his response. And
yeah,
so obviously that was a great question because it got a great passionate
yeah,
response out of him.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
you
so
know,
I was sandwiched in between, I think, two Taylor Swift questions, so
yeah, I thought that because he couldn't finish the line, and he goes, "Next question,"
right.
but the whole room laughed. But yeah, I thought it was crazy that one, the bus was empty. It was like, "Where's the hunger?" And then two, I just saw a lot of people that didn't seem to have that passion, and I didn't know that I was going to have a media pass before I came on that trip. I
Mhm.
just was going to figure it out, so I didn't get to like plan out questions and that sort of thing. But I also wasn't like really that nervous for it too, so that was a benefit.
Mhm.
But but I never would have expected that there would be kind of basic questions like that, where it kind of seems like, all right, I'm just treating this like a job. This
Mhm.
reporter, just treat it like a job. And I can't go back to my editor with nothing. So let me ask two
So
or
so
three basic questions. And that motivates me so much because I'm like, if you're not passionate about this, if this is not what you want to do, if you're not serious about this enough to where you're not going to wake up at 6 or 7 in the morning to get on the Chiefs bus.
Right, because we had to be up. That's the one thing you're missing out. We had to be up super early to be back on that bus. And that's what
Dude,
people don't
that's
understand.
your last. I thought about it and I said, okay, I wake up early or I don't. I
Mhm.
get to interview the Chiefs, my last opportunity ever, maybe. I don't know. My
Right.
last opportunity to interview them before the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm going to that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I think that people have been doing this so long, they
Like, I'm
are
not ready
not
for it.
motivated anymore. But I'm like, if you're not motivated, if you're going to ask basic questions, if you're not here to kill it, then get out because other people would die for this opportunity.
I
That's
was I
crazy.
was very first. So I went to bed Wednesday night at like 1:30 and was up like at 4. That's Vegas time. And I was up, dressed, got my Uber because I wasn't close to the spot. Took my Uber there. It was the very first person line on the shuttle, and I was, and then I was front row when Andy Reid, like, so I was just on the hustle, on the go, and it's just
And
like,
you had to Uber. Some people just had to
yeah,
walk out of
walk.
their
Yeah, I
hotel.
had to Uber because I was 3 hotels down. I was not walking. I learned my lesson, but yeah, so I had to Uber. So I left my hotel probably at 4:30 because the shuttle was leaving like at 5:15ish or 5:30ish or something like that. So of course, you know how big the hotel is. It's like I gotta walk through the hotel to get to the landing spot and everything. So I was on the go, man. I was
Yeah.
hungry, it's just,
And when we found out, that a lot of, there's not that kind of competition that I thought there was.
you're right.
It's like I feel like I can, you know, like you said, we can go in there and be some of the best.
Right. Now it's just knowing how it is. Like next year it's gonna be, saying like, okay, cool, set our stuff down, take a lap here. Now we have the actual agenda. So this is the events we're gonna go to, so now since I
Oh,
knew
yeah.
I was gonna go like New Orleans, I think it's gonna be a cakewalk, but it'll be fun. Hopefully Cowboys will
I
be there.
already put that on my calendar.
Yeah,
That's
it's
next
already
year
booked.
in New Orleans.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
I'm there already. That's going to be amazing. Um, so I guess another topic. Let's talk about the Cowboys, just for a little bit because we don't. It's basically what do they do to improve
Mhm.
that sort of thing. And I think we talked about it at the Super Bowl, and it was just like, all right, well, if they're going to keep Mike McCarthy, if Jerry Jones is going to be in control of this team, they have to be so good that they can overcome that,
Mhm.
right? It's kind of been the same result every year. What are your thoughts?
Well, as spectacular as Super Bowl weekend was, that was the most discouraging part because it felt like, all right, we're not as close to this as I think that we are, So it's just like,
Yeah.
all right, so we got a lot of work to do. And I feel like the very first thing that the Cowboys were going to need to do, honestly, before they even get to the players, is kind of change the culture and change the mindset. I just don't see that toughness, that fight, that combativeness. That if we would have got down like the Chiefs got down versus San Fran, we probably would have folded. So you need to see that fight, but not fake fight, not fake enthusiasm and belief. Like you actually like, okay, we're down by 10. We really know that we can come back. Like the Chiefs, they've done this historically. They've been doing it all season. So they were confident that they could really come back. So they had so many different moments to lean on. And I think it just starts with their culture as a whole here in Kansas City. So I think that's the number one thing. But after that, you got to get this Dak Prescott deal done. Like there's no way around it. I mean, if you charge him 60 mil towards the cap this year, you can't sign anybody, even with the cap increasing today. You're very limited and handcuffed to that position. So you got to get Dak signed, spread the money out. And once you spread the money out, once March 14th comes, you got to hit free agency. You can't sit on your hands and be cheap. So if there's positions that you feel like you need and fill that void, whether it's linebacker, whether it's running back, and there's guys out there that you can have instant impact, not guys that can help us 2 years down the road. Like I'm talking about immediately hit the ground running. You might have to spend a little bit and go and get those guys. And then thirdly, CeeDee Lamb's contract, of course, you have to take care of that. Have the draft, get instant impact guys in the draft versus a futuristic draft like we had last year. But also, you're going to want your defense to really buy into Coach Zimmer and this new staff. Like you got to believe his philosophy, right? Because you can't have it split. Like, nah, I like the way things used to be with Dan Quinn. And I'm not really, no, everybody has to buy in as a collective when it comes to not just Coach Zimmer, but also Mike McCarthy, who's on a 1-year prove it deal. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of things that we need to fix just culture wise, but just from a football standpoint, extend Dak, be more aggressive in free agency in the draft, and just change the culture. We need a little bit more toughness, a little bit more attitude, and to be able to battle adversity. And I think that could help possibly, because they'll clip this. I'm like, oh, you said you were going to get to the Super Bowl. Possibly get to the Super Bowl.
Right. So 2 things. Do you think if Dak signs a $60 million deal, is he serious about winning? Because a lot of people say if the Cowboys want to win, Dak needs to sign a team-friendly deal like Pat Mahomes, like say something, basically take a discount. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's false. I think that's a fallacy that a lot of people buy on to try to cope when it comes to Dak Prescott. Pat Mahomes is the highest paid player on the Kansas City Chiefs. Like he takes up the largest percentage of the Chiefs. It's just at the time when he signed the contract, that's what the price point was. And so what people have to understand, it's market value. And the simple analogy I say, okay, I got 5 PlayStation 5s that I just bought, right? So right now, the market value on eBay, they're going for $700, and I bought them at retail for $400. I'm not selling you, Joe, my PlayStation for $330. Like I'm not. Like I'm selling you for $700, right? So then let's say, for instance, I go on eBay and now they're going for $800. Well, guess what I'm selling my PlayStations for? $800. So that's what happens when it comes to the market price, when it comes to the quarterback position. It's really just the next man up. And that's why Dak wanted to have that short-term deal so he can get back into the market and become the next man up. So it was Joe Burrow, with Lamar Jackson, then it's Joe Burrow, and then it'll be Dak Prescott for probably 2 weeks, and then it'll be maybe Trevor Lawrence, and then it's gonna continue to climb. And that's just the price of doing business if you want a good quality quarterback. So you can't have a guy who was second in MVP voting but want him to be 8th in quarterback payment. Like it just I mean, who logically that doesn't make sense, right? So I think the situation was Dak went out there, even though we didn't advance in the playoffs. It's hard to say not pay him, because if you don't pay him, you're going to be strapped for $60 million, and then next year he just walks away and get absolutely nothing for him. And then what does that mean for the future of your franchise?
Yeah, because they don't have any better options right now. And he played amazing. Just that last game.
Right.
That's so discouraging because no one has an answer. But I did talk to, if you know Rob Ryan, the old Cowboys defensive coordinator, I think I asked him, I said, when were you a coordinator? Because I didn't quite remember. I think it was 2011 through 12.
Yeah.
He goes, I don't know. It was so long ago, whatever. But what I didn't know was that he had so Rex Ryan was actually interested in the DC job. Basically, he said that he reached out to Mike McCarthy, and he never does that, but he reached out to Mike McCarthy and told him that he'd be interested in this job, that he thought the Cowboys were that close, and that he thinks that he could bring some sort of like toughness to the Cowboys defense. They need that energy, toughness and energy. And I asked Rob, his brother, about that at the Lee Steinberg event. And he said, I thought Rex would be great. Now, this was after they signed Mike Zimmer. He said, I thought Rex would be great for that job. I asked him, what do you say to the people that say the Cowboys will never win a Super Bowl with Jerry Jones? And he said, that's a load of crap. He said, it's great. Look at how many Pro Bowlers they draft every year. But what I didn't know when I was talking to him was that Rob Ryan was actually interested in that job as well. So of course he's going to say positive.
You never said the right thing. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, try and get your brother a job or yourself a job, right? Yeah, and I get it because I point a lot of my fingers at Jerry as well. But the reason why is because living here in Kansas City, like, did you even know what Clark Hunt looks like for the Chiefs?
I do now. I mean, I live
right. But before, like, he only comes out, he gets his little AFC championship trophy, then he hands it to Andy Reid, and he's gone, and then Super Bowl trophy here, then he's gone. Like, he doesn't do all these appearances and have a radio show and all up in the camera and playing dirty tactics in the media. Like, I have a GM. They're gonna do all my football stuff. I'm just gonna be the CEO, and just call me when. Like, I live here in Kansas City. I work for the radio. I seen him one time. That was at a dinner event. Like, that's you just don't see him.
Yeah.
Jones he's everywhere. He was at the Super Bowl. He was like.
I can name so many things that he's come out and said that was just like, what? Right. I mean, he said that he didn't inform Mike McCarthy of the Trey Lance trade at all.
Didn't talk to scouts or anybody.
What was the need to say that? And that's just one of like 10 things that he did. Zeke who, and like it's just that part that I'm really tired of when it comes to the Cowboys. Like, just go be rich and let the football people handle the football matters. But Jerry is so now Jerry's backed himself in the corner. We're saying we're going all in this year. Okay, so fans are going to sit back and say, let me see. Well, I didn't all in like that, so it's just one of those things. But and the most frustrating thing is too, they say the Cowboys need to go get King Henry. Well, I tell them, I say they should have got him 8 years ago in the draft when they could have drafted, instead of Zeke, they could have drafted Jalen Ramsey
and then turn around.
Instead of Jalen Smith, they could have drafted Derrick Henry. I believe he was still available.
I was at that draft in Chicago. I have a scar on my fist because I'm a huge Florida State fan, and I was just certain that Jalen Ramsey was coming to us. And no knock to Zeke. I love Zeke. He has a beautiful family. Talk to his mom all the time. But if I could still do it over, I feel like
so
2 for 1.
I don't know that I signed Derrick Henry just because of the fact of that, and he's going on, I think, year 8 or 9. So that's kind of the issue there. But it is frustrating as well, especially because I don't know if you remember this, but we had DeMarco Murray the year prior, and he set the franchise single season rushing record, and they let him go. They let him go to the Eagles. But Jerry and Steven said, well, we don't think running backs last that long, 4 or 5 years max. So when
he scored the winning touchdown versus the Cowboys when he played for the Eagles too.
Right. And then what did they do when Zeke got to year 4 or 5? They signed him to a record deal. So I was like, where was that energy with DeMarco?
Right.
You kind of contradicted yourself there.
And that's why I tell everybody who complains about Dak Prescott, Dak should have been signed before Zeke. Dak was a 4th round pick. Like, so with the value, you could have got Dak before, that deal, that was probably at 30 something million dollars, right? It's a crazy thing. We're at 60 now, but you should have got that deal done before Zeke. But they did Zeke, they did Jalen Smith, they did that entire class before Dak Prescott. So it's like, fault is it that you kicked the money downhill and didn't have a sense of urgency to get the deal done? It's not Dak's, like rightfully so, because all those 3 years, the very first year when Dak won Rookie of the Year, he was playing on pennies. The second year, pennies. Third year, pennies. Fourth year, pennies. Fifth year, franchise. So it's like it wasn't like he deserves his money because what he did in the past, you have to take that into consideration to today's contract as well, because you wasn't being aggressive in getting that deal done earlier on. And rightfully so. So now it's 60 million or I walk.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he'll walk, but I think he'll get close to that because Lamar's getting 55.
Right.
I mean, they have to do that. I think the question is how much is guaranteed and how many years.
The years is the most important
they're
thing.
probably thinking, let's do 3 years, and Dak probably wants 4 or 5, somewhere around there.
Yeah, Dak can't do 3. Like, I love you, Dak. He's right here on my wall. Not 3, 4. Okay, we can work with it, but 3, we can't do 60 million for 3 years. Like that's
I mean, I don't know. And you think Jerry wants 3, or Jared rather spread it out longer?
They want to spread it out. I mean, if they could do 5, they would do 5 because that's the angle that the Cowboys always like to do. They like to sign to lengthy contracts, but that was the hiccup last time because they wanted Dak in a 5-year deal and he wanted 3 or 4, whatever terms that he got, right? So that was the snag. It's like, no, because they like to thin the money out, and then you can always with the swipe of a pen, kick money down the road like they kind of did with Tony Romo and different things like that. So that was kind of the conversation piece. But I feel like right now, especially with the news breaking today about the salary cap going out, Todd France, he's gonna want his money for his client. And they have all the leverage. They have 99.99% of leverage. The only leverage the Cowboys have is like, we're just gonna let you play and move on from you next year. But then we lose out as fans because we won't have a quarterback. So, and I tell people, okay, well, we can just walk from Dak next year. Well, what happens if we go out there and Dak Prescott has an incredible season and we get to an NFC championship? Then he walks. Like that would be like heartbreaking for a Cowboys fan. Like, what? Dak gets us to that level.
It's going to be the same thing with Dak's not going anywhere unless there's someone on the team currently that's going to take his spot. Basically like a Tony Romo situation. Like Romo was going to be there forever until someone else came along.
You would think, but I think the treatment that Romo got from the front office versus Dak got is a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like they kind of loved and admired, Romo. Because think about this, like they didn't even want to play Dak his rookie season, even when Romo came back. Like that was 1,000% Jason Garrett saying, I can't do it. And then I think eventually, Des Bryant told us the story that, Jason Witten, who was Romo's right-hand man, said, no, we can't take this kid out. So like it was like that huge divide until Jason Witten and Jason Garrett came out and said, no, this is Dak's team right now. And that's when Romo came out and had that whole, little spiel about, the little, we read off the article, whatever. But Jerry Jones was Romo's, he was ready to give it back to him, but if that situation happened right now, when Dak went down, let's say it's Trey Lance, I don't think Jerry's gonna be like, oh, we gotta go back to he's gonna ride Trey. And I feel like that Trey is Jerry's toy, because like you said, he didn't talk to anybody. He just went up and said, no, what? I'll give you a 4th round pick for this kid. I ain't gonna talk to no scouts, no coaches, no nothing. I'm gonna get it myself. And so, so it's gonna be interesting. But some of those dark clouds and different things, that's what I think overshadows the Cowboys, because it's never just about football. It's always just something getting in the way.
Right. And I think too, well, if, when Romo went down, like you said, that was the final straw, is when Jason Witten finally came forward and said, we got to roll with Dak.
Right.
That was surprising to me. And that stuff, that news just came out. I'd like to know what Romo's mindset is still, because I don't even think he talks to Dak. Like I think there's still some beef there. There's got to be. But
like I said, well, from what I've heard from people who I've talked to, because there's this whole narrative, right, that Romo put Dak under the wing and was helping him his entire rookie season. He wasn't even around because he was rehabbing, so he wasn't in the locker room. Like a lot of that was Mark Sanchez that was helping Dak his rookie season. So even though I think Romo and Dak were cool, it wasn't like it was like friction.
No, and that's not
it was just like, okay, you got it for now, bro. But when I come back, I'll get my job back. And Romo came back and he thought he was going to get his job back like he's normally done. And when the team was kind of split, you know what I'm saying? The locker room was split. And even your right hand man said, nah, we can't do it. Then I think there was kind of some animosity there, just a little bit.
I still think, like, okay, I'll say this. I think they made a mistake by not putting Romo in later that year because he would have been more prepared to beat the Packers. Not saying we would have in the playoffs. The only issue that would have caused is long-term, I think Dak was better for us. That season, Romo would have been better for us. But long-term, if you start Romo for the playoff game and later in the season, then how do you roll with Dak next year?
Yeah.
So then you're stuck with two quarterbacks. So that's
you gotta go with the date that you went to the dance with. I mean, that was all. I mean, it wasn't like it was split, right? It wasn't like Dak only played 6 games and then Romo was playing. Like it was all Dak and Zeke from preseason to the playoffs. Like, so he's earned that spot. And honestly, if you go back to that game, even though we lost versus Green Bay, Dak did everything to win that game. That was Byron Jones giving up a 3rd and 20, right? So it's like he outdueled Aaron Rodgers even as a rookie. But I get it. We'll kind of look back on it with Romo, but it's like the way we was rolling, it was hard.
I mean, I was a big Romo fan then, and I was saying, of course we're going to have success with Dak was great that year, right? But you also had Zeke, a phenomenal offensive line, and then you were playing easy opponents because the year prior you had Romo went down and we went like 3-13. So you get an easy schedule with an all-star running back, great offensive line, and then Des Bryant and Jason Witten. Like, you should have some success, but I think we went like 9 or 10-0. So that's just kind of hard to. You can't change course there.
Is with the 3rd string quarterback because people forget, like, you had Tony Romo, you had Kellen Moore, then you had Jamil Showers, who was a 3rd string quarterback, and Dak Prescott. So you had Romo go down, then you had to have Kellen Moore go down, and then it was between Dak and Jamil, and what I'm saying? So it was like
that was obvious.
It was one of those things. Like I said, sometimes I go back and just watch Dak's first preseason game, and like he just came in out the gate. But from the conversations that we were hearing, even in camp, they were kind of saying like, all right, this kid, so it's kind of like we hear like Brock Purdy. You kind of heard them talk about the Super Bowl, like with Brock Purdy, like you see something a little bit different, and the one thing they talked about Dak, especially when it comes to the Senior Bowl that he was at, is like his leadership call. Like he can just wing you over. So, I just think it was just kind of one of those things. And here we are.
Yeah,
now,
he is a great leader.
Vet, right? He's an old vet. It's just funny.
No.
Yes.
And I think probably when I kind of accepted that Dak was our guy too, was when my dad said, man, it's like, I don't know, Dak just seems to throw it so much better. Like he's throwing the deep ball. He's like, I just don't remember seeing Romo throwing the deep ball like that recently.
Right.
So he was, there was something, there that we were missing with Romo. So makes sense. But I remember the Cowboys trainers told me when that happened and they were kind of debating on who to go with, they said Romo was working back from his injury, but during the rehab process, they said Romo wasn't giving it his all. Wasn't giving them 100% with his recovery plan and that sort of thing. And they went to Jerry and Steven and told him, Romo's not giving us his all with his recovery. And they said, well, screw him. We don't need him. We'll roll with Dak. And that was crazy to me because I just wouldn't have expected that from Romo. But
it's always like and I saw the story with Romo, of course, but it's like, why he didn't just go to another team. I don't know why it was just like, if I can't play Dallas, I'm not going to play anywhere else. But what people have to understand, I know why that was, because you kept having spine injuries. So eventually your wife will say, bro, like, it's spine. It's not, ankle. Like the injuries were adding up. And it's funny, like, Shannon Sharp just did the interview with Johnny Manziel. And people were like, Tuck, you wanted Johnny Manziel. I was like, I love Johnny Manziel, but the reason why I wanted another quarterback, because Tony Romo was not durable. Like he was just always hurt. And we were always just riding on a thread. And as soon as he went down, the season was over. So I was like, we need a quality backup or somebody. So that's why I was so pro Johnny Manziel. And then I always have my famous tweet that kind of went viral, was that if you go back to 2016, Good Morning Football was like, okay, Cowboys fans, who should we draft? And I was like, Dak Prescott, high IQ and proven leader. The Cowboys will be lucky to have him. And that was kind of like my
what did they show it on Good Morning Football?
So crazy story, right? So I was in Chicago during that draft, and Michael Irvin was hosting. So we're in the little auditorium, right? And so they're asking those questions, and my tweet is up for Michael Irvin to read, okay? But it's a commercial segment, and the Chicago Bears, I think they were like a pick after us. And the entire time they were chanting, "Here we go, Bears!" Here, so it was so loud in there. Michael Irvin was like, I can't get the tweet. Bears fans are riled up. Back to you. I'm just like, no, shut up. Like, shut up, bro. Like, so he didn't read my tweet on air. But I still have it, on Twitter that a lot of people always look at, and they're kind of like, yeah, I was.
You got the receipts, yeah.
Got the receipts, man. Got the receipts on Dak.
That's crazy, yeah. Because I mean, to be honest, I analyzed the draft a little bit, but I didn't know who he was at the time because I wasn't that deep into it. But that was a great call out. You should definitely pin that tweet or bring it back up. But I also remember when I talked to Rob Ryan, I said, "What do you think about Mike Zimmer?" And he goes, "Oh, I'd fall asleep talking to him." He's like, "They need someone that it's tough and light up this defense." But maybe he was just a little jealous, but maybe that's also his style. I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of conversations about Zimmer. A lot of people think he's going to bring this fire, stern old man and yelling at the players. But what people got to understand, like, today's athletes are different. Like, you can't coach them like you used to coach back in the 90s or early 2000s and yell and cuss at players. Like, not every player is going to respond to that. So it's going to be interesting to see how he adapts. But I think he will, because he's with Deion at Jackson State. So he's been with, this new era of players. But people think, Zimmer's going to come in here and tell Micah Parsons to get off that podcast. I'm like, no, he's not. No, he's not. Not if he wants to keep his job. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but I think it's, let it play out. We got to let it play out. But honestly, it's not about just the defense for me. It's about having ham with no burger. And what I mean by that is, like, when the offense shows up, defense is absent, or if you go to a playoff loss versus the 49ers, defense did everything to win. Offense doesn't show up. So that's the problem with Dallas. Like, if you fix the defense and we're playing back to where we had it prior to last year, we're perfectly fine. But is the offense going to show up when we need them the most? And so I think the fun part about next year is we have some games that we cannot run and hide and avoid from. We got, Joe Burrow, we got the Ravens, we got the Steelers, we got the Houston Texans, we got the 49ers again. Like, we have some real dogs on our schedule where we can sit back and say, all right, maybe we're a much better team than last year, or we can sit back, man, we ain't got it, Joe. Let's just go focus on the draft or go do something else. But me and Joe will be at the Super Bowl. I don't know about the Cowboys, but we're going to be at the Super Bowl in New Orleans, regardless.
Yeah, I'd like to see them get a good running back, good running game to help Dak. And then I think I'd love to see Micah develop more into a leader, be more vocal on the defense, not necessarily like a Ray Lewis, but I think about a guy like Ray Lewis, and why isn't Micah that? Because he's like that as a player on the field. I just wish that he could be that guy that, when they huddle up on defense or, they need to get something going, that he can be more vocal.
I think what happens, because this has been a hot topic button, especially, we did showing it last night, is that we have to allow our players to grow up. You know what I'm saying? Because Micah is still young. So, like, I think a lot of people think that if you're the most talented, you're just instant leader. Like, you're not. Like I said with Dak Prescott, like, he had leadership qualities. He wasn't the best person on that team, right? But he just had those leadership. So, like, you have to grow. And, like, all players really bump their head when they're young. I mean, heck, Ray Lewis had a whole other situation before he kind of slowed things down in terms of the Ray Lewis that we know. So, when it comes to Micah Parsons, he's trying, but there's so many different people throwing dirt on his name right now. Like, he's not doing anything. Like, he's at home. He has 2 kids, a family. He's out on podcasts. He's playing video games. Like, he's not hurting anybody. But since Cowboys fans are so hurt by that loss, it's just like, it's Micah's fault. Get off the podcast. Get off the video games. Do push-ups. Eat protein. This is
be a robot. Yeah,
be a robot. Like, this is a 3-time All-Pro we're talking. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some other people that needs to be addressed versus Micah Parsons. Like, if there's anyone else, like I can tell you some other guys we definitely point our weapons at, but if there's anyone I can count on that's going to employ season after season, played with the flu, hasn't missed a game in 3 years in Dallas, injuries, everything, it's that guy Micah Parsons. So I don't understand where all this criticism's coming from. Is everybody an angel? Absolutely not. But let's not make him the complete villain and kind of point this whole playoff lapse on Micah Parsons. If he had 4 sacks versus Green Bay, we lose by 20. Like it made no difference. So one of those things.
I mean, I think it made me feel a lot better when I saw that stat that there's X amount of teams that haven't won a Super Bowl since the Cowboys last won theirs, and one of them was the 49ers. And that was one of my joys of being in the building, because the funny thing about it, because I was actually in there when the 49ers kicked the field goal in overtime, the 49ers fans, that building erupted. Like, there was 49ers fans hugging and crying and stuff and drink spilling. And I was even confused. I was like, wait, it's not the first. Like, so I'm sitting on my phone trying to check the overtime rules. I'm like, did something happen or change? So they thought they won because they thought that was the reason why they received the ball. And so then when it's like, okay, Pat Mahomes gets the ball, everyone sat back down in their seat, like, okay, here it goes. And to see Pat march lethargically down the field and then just rip their hearts out. I'm just like, 5 rings, so start all over from scratch. So, my little Cowboys fandom kind of leaked out just a little bit, at the game. But 5 rings, and the 49ers on a drought longer than the Cowboys. Would you imagine that? I know. But so do you think, interviewing those guys, do you think the 49ers, or do you think the Chiefs were more prepared than the 49ers just from when we interviewed them? Did it seem that way? Or
I think both teams were prepared. I just think one team, just X factor, is just a bigger X factor than the other team. I think that's really the main difference, that, Pat Mahomes really stepped up when you needed Pat Mahomes. But I think both teams came out and played well. I mean, you had the early fumbles on both sides. Yeah, I mean,
what I noticed is the Chiefs players seemed a little more focused, a little more serious in their interviews. Like, I went up to Isaiah Pacheco and I asked him, I said, what's your favorite song right now? Like, something you got on repeat, trying to do one of those compilation videos. He said, I ain't really listening to music right now. I'm just focused on the game and my family. I was like, okay. And then, Travis Kelce, I mean, he seemed locked in. Chris Jones, he wasn't really like playing around or joking around. He seemed real locked in. The leaders and the vets on that team. Isaiah Pacheco, he's second year, but still, one of the key contributors to that offense. The 49ers players like George Kittle, always joking around. CMC, I don't know. They just kind of seemed a little more. I mean, you could go either way, right? If the 49ers won, I could have said, oh, they're more laid back. They were chill. They were loose, whatever.
Well, when it comes to the Chiefs, I mean, they're playing with house money. I mean, they're returning champ, so it's like they can kind of beat, and they've been there before. I mean, they've been there last, 3 out of 4. So I think they're probably just used to it, versus maybe sometimes for the 49ers, the spotlight, because it's like, some of these teams, I mean, they don't get interviewed. Like, I mean, we saw like the fishbowl, like, some of those players sitting at the table, like they probably never get spoken to, but they still had people asking them questions and different things like that. So I think it was a different experience versus the Chiefs players. They're just used to it. Like, okay, it's just business as usual, right? So, I think as far as game day preparation, I think they were both pretty much in the ballpark. I mean, both teams played well, went down to the overtime, but like I said, man, that X factor in Pat Mahomes, he's just him. He's just him, period. It's Pat Mahomes and everybody else. So, what can you say? Dude.
Yeah, and he showed it all. They doubted him the whole playoffs. I still can't believe that.
Yeah.
So we got about 10 minutes left. Do you have anyone in the draft? I've seen your tweets. I think you were talking about Edgerrin Cooper. Do you have any prospects that you love, and then some prospects that the Cowboys could realistically get?
Yeah, there's a few. So I'm pretty much probably like 4 rounds deep into my draft scouting process. Edgerrin Cooper is somebody I just dropped the video, linebacker out of Texas A&M, phenomenal high motor guy. He kind of has those Micah S traits where it's just revved up on go, man. Like a lot of people thought I was speeding up his film. I'm like, no, man, this is just I'm not, there's no effects or anything, man. He's just out the gate going. So
Is
he
he
would be
like
a
another Von Miller, maybe? I mean,
he's a little bit lighter. He kind of fits the Fred Warner frame. He's like 6'2", 230-ish, kind of like that lean basketballish frame, but he can move. He's not really just a Von Miller disruptor off the edge. You can send him everywhere. I mean, you can blitz him in the middle.
Von Miller, I want to say Von Miller, when he came out in the draft, he was 235.
Yeah, about 235, right. But Von, he had a frame where you can still say, I can put that grown man body on it. I feel like when it comes to Edgerrin, he's probably capped out because you don't want to diminish his speed and his athleticism, right? But, be that as it may, man, he's sideline to sideline. He's revved up, so I would love him. Would I take him at 24 is the magical question. When it comes to the Cowboys in this year's draft, if you have a need, if you have a guy, go get him. Don't play games, because I don't want to be like, oh, we're going to sit back and hope he falls and slides and he gets sniped 2 picks before us. If you feel like, there's a linebacker need, he's our number 1 linebacker, just go get him. Don't try to be cute. Some other prospects who I've been looking at is a running back out of the University of Tennessee, Jalen Wright. Running back, very elusive, explosive back, home run hitter, can hit his head on a goalpost, only 20 years old. I think he'll be a phenomenal day 2 prospect for the Chiefs, or not the Chiefs, for the Cowboys. There I go, mixing. But if you ask me right now to go on tape to say who or what position the Cowboys are going to go, I would lean towards Jordan Morgan, the left tackle out of the University of Arizona. Phenomenal pass pro guy. Like, he only gave like a 1 sack, I think, in the last 2 seasons. Very technically sound. He has the size. The huge question mark with him is his arm length, because the NFL like measurable, so his arm length might be a little short. We'll see next week at the combine. So some people are predicting him as a guard, but I think he'll be perfectly fine. But if you go back to last year's draft, the conversation between Matthew Bergeron and Mazi Smith, that was the tug of war, right? The left tackle from Syracuse that went to the Falcons, and then Mazi Smith, right? So we went towards Mazi, but we didn't address the offensive line until the 5th round with Austin Richards out of North Carolina. So I feel like if the Cowboys have the opportunity to redo that over again, they would probably go left tackle. And I feel like with this year's class, there's going to be a lot of quality left tackles sitting right there at 24, where it's like, okay, let's get our guy, because Tyron Smith ain't getting any younger, and we know what can happen if he goes down, because we had to go with Chima Udoga out there. Let's not go into that same issue. Let's go get our left tackle. So I would lean towards Jordan Morgan out of the University of Arizona to be the Cowboys pick as of right now on February 23rd.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a pretty good pick, because that's what they need, and that's probably the best prospect there. Tyron can only play for so long. So he can only play for so long and play for so many games, right? Like, you pretty much know you're not going to get a full season out of Tyron Smith. So why not have a good quality insurance policy? Now, if it's me, but I'm in charge and I'm Jerry Jones, I'm just kicking my prospect in Tyler Smith to the left tackle position, who can play that position, and I'm bringing TJ Bass in and plugging him at left guard. But I'm not in the house. The question is, will Tyron Smith be on the roster this year? Is his contract up? So if they re-sign him, that tells us they're not going to take a left tackle, because there's no point in having Tyron on the roster, right?
No, because they did the same thing last year. He was on the roster last year, and they really considered going left tackle. So that's the reason. That's the reason, because the reason why things have changed is because I think the Cowboys believe that Tyler Smith is a left guard. They're going to lock him at left guard. They don't want him at tackle. So I think that they're really trying to find that bridge for Tyron Smith. And you had Matt Waletzko, really didn't work out. You had Austin Richards, really didn't work out. You got some guys really didn't work out. Go get you a guy that you can say, okay, Tyron, this is your last run here in Dallas for 1 year. And then when you go out week 4, week 5, or whatever, then we have
he's gonna get injured.
And I hate to put that on him. People like, why? Come on, like, I don't put injuries on players, but it just happens every year.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's
like,
going to be like a
you already know.
2-game thing or
Right.
something. Yeah, you're right. Because it's gotten to that point. Because I was going to say, if you put Tyler Smith, say you don't re-sign Tyron, and you just
Mhm.
put Tyler Smith at left tackle, and then you've got Steele at right tackle. He's
Mhm.
locked up, right?
Right.
You're not drafting a left tackle,
Right.
but if you keep Tyler Smith at left guard, and you say, all right, we do need a left tackle. Even if you re-sign Tyron, you can
Mhm.
pretty much bet that he's not gonna. He's
Right.
lucky if he's gonna play 10 games. He's lucky
Right.
if he can play 10
Right.
games.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
So, and what
so
they've been doing him like on a 1-year deal, and it's been
yeah,
kind of like on a incentive base, which doesn't hurt the Cowboys because for whatever reason, I'm not sure Tyron Smith agent, he's been very friendly to the Cowboys and done them a lot of favors since the moment he's been in Dallas. So, I just think that he'll probably return, but it's really time to find that bridge guy. Okay, this is going to be our left tackle of the future. I thought it was going to be
yeah.
Tyler Smith, but you need to go get that guy. So,
Yeah, for
Jordan
whatever
Morgan,
reason, I've wondered too because I think Tyron has probably been a little underpaid throughout the years,
mhm.
and some left tackles might hold out or might demand a better contract. But I think I think he signed. I could be wrong. I think he signed like a 10-year deal at one point.
He signed a long, lengthy deal, and that was like to the Cowboys a mega favor,
Or
and
it
I'm
was an
and I
extension.
yeah, I'm not sure.
And
I
they
never
said,
really looked on why, like, what was the conversation piece, but he did for a left tackle and as young as he was to sign that lengthy, long deal, like,
yeah,
I mean, but, I mean, hey.
yeah. Because I remember them asking it. I think it was maybe like a 7-year extension to make it to
Yeah,
10 years. And they
yeah,
said, when you're done, when this contract's up, you're only 30 years old. Are you going to keep
yeah,
playing past that? And he's like, I don't know. We'll see.
right,
Probably. But,
yeah,
but
yeah.
cool. I'm excited for the draft. I still need to do my analysis. But yeah, man, I think it's been 2 weeks almost since the Super Bowl. I'm still
It was 8
digesting it.
years. In 2016, he signed an 8-year contract.
Oh wow. Yeah, see that's actually, and I think that was like 2 years after he was drafted too. So like I
Yeah.
could be wrong.
Yeah,
Uh,
$97 million, 8 years. So average salary was $12 million a year. Who's his agent? Athletes first. I don't know, bro. Hey, So
so do you believe the Dallas Cowboys are cursed?
I don't want to say cursed. I don't want to say cursed. I just think that
Let
there's a
me
lot.
answer this. Let me ask you this. Did you think when Jimmy Johnson got inducted into the Ring of Honor, did you think that would lift some sort of curse or be that something that we needed?
Yeah, I thought that was going to be the boost, man. I mean, I was there for that game, man. I cried tears because that was something that's really important to a lot of us, But I thought like things would be different. Like, okay, we put all the bickering and the divisiveness beside us. Like now it's just going to be football. We're going to get back, and the Packers said, "Oh no, I got a trick for y'all." But I just thought that maybe that was the reason because I feel like sometimes sports guys just don't like ugly, and you're doing Jimmy Johnson, who really built this team. A lot of younger Cowboys fans don't understand. Like Jimmy was one of the I'm not here if it was not for Jimmy Johnson, and that's why I was saying in my video on his speech. Like I'm probably a 49ers fan. Like my best friend was a 49ers fan. His dad was a 49ers fan. They had Dion back then. Red's my favorite color. Like I'm probably leaning that way. If not
Red's
for
your favorite color.
yeah,
Oh my,
what I'm saying? So if not for Jimmy Johnson and triplets in the foundation that he built. So it's like it was important to me that he was in the Ring of Honor. And I was like, it's something unfortunate to ever happen to Jimmy Johnson and he wasn't in that Ring of Honor. I don't know if I could ever forgive the organization, and that may have been my turning point. So I was like, okay, at least I can get past that. So
yeah.
I thought that would be released a little bit, but Jordan Love said absolutely not. So so maybe there is some curse, but I just think sometimes it's just ego. I'm a huge Dallas Mavericks fan, and I felt like the year the Mavericks won the championship, Mark Cuban just shut up for a little bit, stop all the antics, and let his basketball coaching staff and organization build a championship contender, and he got out of the way. There was no more side circus Mark Cuban. I need that to be the case for the Joneses, but different animal that we're dealing with.
And a lot of people in the Dallas area, they still know Jimmy Johnson, even some of the kids, because their parents, what do? Their parents tell them about that experience. They tell them about Jimmy
Mhm.
Johnson, Troy Aikman, Emmett Smith. They tell them about the triplets and the
Mhm.
dynasty. So a lot of people see him as, that guy, and they're
Mhm.
hoping that, I
Yeah.
don't know. It was just so disappointing. But I don't know if you saw this video. I put it out there to get, I thought that it needed more exposure because I found it on YouTube and it got like 10,000 views, but it was Jimmy Johnson talking about the origin of the feud between him and Jimmy. And it had been talked about before, but it
Mhm.
really never came from Jimmy or Jerry's mouth. Right. So, I found this old video and he goes, I remember it like it was yesterday. Jimmy or Jerry goes, I'm going to handle all the financial. You'll handle all the football. We'll make sports history. And then Jimmy says, then we started to turn south when Jerry, basically Jimmy made a trade for Tony Casillas. It's
Mhm.
like, I traded for Tony Casillas. 10 minutes later, Jerry goes in a press conference. He sees him on TV and starts talking about how he traded for Tony Casillas.
Mhm.
Jimmy goes, you didn't trade for Tony Casillas. I traded for Tony Casillas. And
Mhm.
he told Jerry, he said, that's what bothers me. And Jerry said, well, Jimmy, I can make $10 million and nobody cares. But when you trade for that backup lineman, whatever, people love it. And I want to be part of that.
Mhm.
And that's when it started to kind of, and I shared that video, and Tony Casillas even said on his Instagram live, he goes, I just saw that video. It was 31 years later after the trade. And he goes, I had no idea that my trade was apparently the origin of the
That's
feud.
crazy. That's
uh,
crazy, man.
but there was so much publicity on that. And I shared probably 30 videos on that on my other TikTok account,
Mhm.
just of Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson and the feud, and just basically kind of making Jerry not look so great and
Mhm.
Jimmy looking good. Um, and I thought it was strange that Jerry randomly announced in the middle of the season, because they always announce at the beginning of the year who they're going to put in the Ring of Honor. And he said, we're doing one player this year. We're doing DeMarcus.
Mhm.
And then randomly, so I thought about why. And I think it was the bad media exposure. And
Mhm.
then number two, here's the other thing that a lot of people don't know is Jerry, they're doing a documentary that's going to be on Netflix. And
Oh, so that's where the Netflix cameras are coming from. Because I didn't know if Dak was going to be on
what?
QB on quarterback.
Where did you see the Netflix cameras?
So there was reports that there was at a few practices there was Netflix cameras following at the practice, and so I didn't know if it was Dak secretly going to be on the quarterback show that Pat Mahomes was on.
Yeah.
But since it's the Jerry Jones show, because I knew he was going to be one, so that's going to be on Netflix. I thought that was going to be on Prime. That makes
So what practice was this? Like before
there
the
was a
season?
few. No,
Training camp?
during the season.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. But
yeah.
were you ever there? Or you just saw like people
No,
announce?
no, no. Some of my people are inside. Like, yeah, there was a bunch of Netflix cameras there
Yeah.
at
Well, he
practices. So
did.
that's
I want to say it was either 25 or $50 million deal that he did with Netflix.
mm,
And it's not necessarily about the Cowboys. This documentary is about Jerry Jones. And so
gotcha.
I'm thinking those producers or whoever's making this show, right? They're paying attention to any publicity currently about Jerry Jones. They're
Mhm.
going on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and seeing positive things,
Right.
negative things, current
Yeah.
things they can bring up. And if they type in Jerry Jones, I guarantee you they're seeing my videos, they're seeing other people's videos, and they're saying, how can we paint Jerry in a better light?
Oh, they're probably
What
gonna
if
see
he does the most selfless thing? They say, what if Jerry Jones does the most selfless thing and puts Jimmy in the Ring of Honor? That would
yeah,
make
that
him look
makes
amazing.
sense. And what an episode that will be, right? So
Yeah.
now it makes sense. So I was hoping Dak was going to be on quarterback, but that makes a lot more sense. So
Even though he said 1922 or 1923.
There you go.
Like on December 30th of 1923, you're going in that.
There you go.
Anyway, well, that about does it. I need to get some water. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Do it again.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys. Like I said, we're doing a lot of draft content over there on CFO Sports. So even if you're not a Cowboys fan, we do a lot of draft content and, just talking to NFL fans and getting ready to get through this grueling off season. So I appreciate you guys, and we'll definitely do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jordan.
All right.